So I did just officially go live. So
Did you like the Mike and Bob graphic? You see the comment that both of them made to me on Discord? They were both like, "I look like this. I love it."
yeah,
It's like the most Mike and Bob thing to say for it is great to see
one
that.
sec. Let me see if I'm going public or not on like
Hey, it
Facebook.
popped up on Twitter. It's up on the top of announcements. Ben Malcomson is live on the feed. I'm gonna
Nice.
click on it. Yeah, it's working. So I'm watching the
So
Twitter live.
yeah. So the only downer is, which we already have some people joining us, but you haven't missed anything yet. The show hasn't officially started. We just thought we'd go ahead and ramp up the live stream, give people a chance to roll in. Currently checking Facebook. Strangely, Robbie, which I'll leave it as is. It's fine. I could just periodically check on it. But even though I set that setting, it's still showing my Facebook Live as just friends only,
Yeah, I'm
unfortunately.
not really sure
So
why it does that. I
I
need
might
to
have to
check on
keep playing
mine when it
around with
does it.
that. But which, while we're still prepping, I could do one more check and just make sure I'll
It
check.
looks like you're still
Hopefully.
getting some views though. A lot of people looking at it after we're done.
Yeah. Well, that's a good thing too. Is
Whatever.
like when it's over, I can set it public, but I don't think it won't let me do it while I'm live. I can share it, but I'm afraid if I share it and it's like that, it's just going to show up as like a blocked
I'm not sure.
view. But yeah, tonight's episode, again, I brought back chapters recently. This chapters is about the stories throughout our life, which could be anything. The show could be all encompassing. That's one of the things I like about this platform is we can discuss sports, we can discuss inspirational stories. I can bring on different guests. So, for example, I've done an intro since I've been back. I did Robbie and I, which is one of my guests tonight. We did an episode on our mom who had passed away recently, a couple of months or a little over 2 months ago now. And we did an episode last week on her memory and her impact on our lives, and it was very therapeutic. I don't know if you agree on that too, Robbie, but I think that being able to really talk about her with the Facebook audience and the YouTube audience was a lot of fun. Just so people know, which hopefully we'll be able to see it. Like this is the first time I'm streaming on X, so X and YouTube. If you have comments, if you use those platforms, we would be able to see your comments and spotlight them on the screen as we're talking throughout the show. Facebook, I'll probably have to bounce back and forth because it's set to friends only, even though I got it set to public. So I'll probably have to be able to bounce back and forth with comments from there. But yeah, it should be fun. I was just telling Robbie, I wouldn't be surprised if we have a certain level of guests tonight just because, or an audience, because everybody's got Indiana Hoosier fever right now. We had that bye week last week, and now we got the big Oregon game tomorrow. But this show is actually about an upcoming trip we're doing, which I'll explain more once we go live officially. About the Michigan State game next week. I've already got tickets for that for me, Robbie, and my brother-in-law, Brian Shum. We're all three going up there Friday and staying Friday and Saturday night and going to the game. But it's Robbie's first ever Indiana Hoosier football game, which I've been to my share myself, but he's never been. So I thought it'd be fun for us to put a show together to talk about that, our memories and our anticipation for it. That's why I titled this Anticipation, Brotherhood, and the Spirit of Indiana Football. But we got about like 10 questions we put together that we can bounce ideas off, and I'm sure we'll have organic stuff. But again, the audience can comment throughout the show, and we'll be more than happy to acknowledge that or be a part of the conversation. It's all very fluid and organic, but I think it'll be fun experience. What about you, Rob? Are you looking forward to
I agree,
enjoying
and
the show?
I think the excitement will be there even more for the Michigan State game if Indiana can pull off this upset tomorrow in Eugene, Oregon. I think there's a lot of apprehension going on. At least that's how I feel. Like, of course, I'm excited, but I still get so nervous for these big games. And I guess it's just because of, as Indiana fans throughout history, you're kind of used to necessarily not meeting the competition well on a level. Of course, they proved that wrong very well against Illinois, like at home. But I feel like playing Oregon on the road is just a whole nother test. I think this would be an excellent opportunity to sort of throw back into the face a lot of people that question the validity and credibility of Indiana's more rise into more of a name for football. And being able to beat those really competitive teams, especially on the road, a top 5 team like that, would be incredible. But, you and I are going to try to channel as much excitement for next week's game, but not, of course, not forgetting the importance of tomorrow. It's not like we're riding off tomorrow or anything like that. I do want to mention, Ben, before you start the show, that if you're an IU fan and you're listening, just because you want to be with somebody like-minded, talking about the game in some way, tomorrow helps us pass time until tomorrow gets here. But if you have been to a football game, if you remember what your first experience was like, I would love to know your comments to Ben on his Twitter, X, or Facebook, or YouTube, or any of those, because that might give me more perspective in what it's like to go. And we know, Ben, it's going to be sold out. It looks like all the home games left are sold out.
Yep.
Which is pretty awesome as well. And it's all part of a culture shift. It takes time, I think, for all of us to get more comfortable and for the fan base to get more, to get stronger and more resilient. It's just going to have to take a culture of winning for years, not just a season and a half of success on that. So it makes sense. It's fair enough for that. I'm still not going to overlook the fact that we can enjoy this, though. We can still enjoy this ride as we're going.
Yeah. And like I said, we used to be a part of the Indiana Hoosier podcast community with Hoosier Heartland Podcasts, which is, we took a break along with Chapters whenever, about, 3 years ago now?
Yeah.
So it's kind of fun to, we're kind of like dipping our toes back in that realm right now too, talking about something we're passionate about, love. And again, this whole episode's about that build up to that experience. And what our plan is to do this tonight, go through that whole experience next week, and then I want to do a reaction show to that experience. Might even see if my brother-in-law Brian would join us for that episode and just have a little 3-man discussion. And she might not be watching now, or both of them actually, but a big shout out to Kathy Chong and Bill Murphy, who used to be a part of our Hoosier Heartland podcast team. I'm sure if they're not watching live or they're later on, we miss you guys, and we've been thinking of you. And big congratulations to Kathy too, because she's gotten married over that time, and now she's a mother. So that's just awesome.
A lot has changed.
Yeah. But before we fully get started, again, tonight's episode is about that experience. I'm currently streaming live on Facebook, my Facebook profile. I'm on X for the first time streaming live, so at Ben Malcomson. If you want to search that on X, you can catch the show live there. And on my YouTube channel, Chapters Conversations That Matter, you can check that out on there. Again, feel free to comment. You can say hi. You can react to the questions as we're doing them. We can all answer these questions together. Robbie and I are definitely sharing them over the mic, but we'd be more than happy to have your guys' participation tonight. I know so far there's over 18 people join us, so thank you for your time. We're doing a later show as well. So, but again, like I said, Robbie, with the football game coming up tomorrow, I think it's even more enjoyable for us to get together and have more conversations about IU football right now, just anticipating that game tomorrow, that big game against Oregon. Yeah. So in saying that, I'm going to go ahead and take off the coming soon part. And, Robbie, I'll do a brief intro with the intro music, and then we'll just kind of go right into it. Sound good? All right, here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Chapters, Conversations That Matter. Tonight's podcast is around what I call the journey to Memorial Stadium. The episode's entitled Anticipation, Brotherhood, and the Spirit of Indiana Football. So in saying that, I got my twin brother, Robbie, joining us tonight. Robbie, welcome back to Chapters. I could have swore you were just on this show recently, weren't you?
It was like, I didn't think I'd be a guest 2 episodes in a row. Very fortunate, though. I'm very glad to be here.
Yeah, so tonight what we're talking about, again, just to acknowledge, we're not looking past tomorrow's game. Big game tomorrow against Oregon on the road. But this episode is about the following week as well, the Michigan State game at home. I got tickets. It'll be my first IU football game to attend this year. And this will be Robbie's first ever Indiana Hoosier football experience. So I thought it'd be really fun for us to get together, talk about that excitement building up, maybe share some memories. And then once that experience is done, we'll do a reaction episode as well. So that's the plan, is for us to travel up to Bloomington next weekend. We're going to stay Friday, Saturday, and come back Sunday. So we're really going to take in the whole experience overall. But Robbie, before we really dive into the questions, what do you think about the trip coming up?
Well, I'm just excited. It's not even just the football game. Like I told you, I'm excited about the tailgate. I've never done an Indiana football tailgate experience before. So seeing people that we're friends with and that we're very familiar with, like Tonsoni and Galen and all those people, Amanda Pavelka and Josh and them, it's going to be really cool to see, hopefully, a lot of familiar faces. I would also like to just enjoy Bloomington. As you know, Ben, Bloomington this time of the year is beautiful. As long as it's not raining or something like that. The weather is unpredictable, but it's really pretty. Try to maybe go have a beer at Upstairs Pub. Would be kind of cool to at least say we've been there at least once. Although I'm sure that's a little bit of a younger area to hang out at. Me and you being in our 40s probably don't fit in super well. But just taking in Bloomington again, as we'll discuss on the show, there's some nostalgia there for sure. And our listeners should also know that, me and Ben are twins, but hell, man, me and you haven't been around each other living together in over 20 years. And these moments mean a lot to me because I live in Southern Kentucky, only about an hour away from Nashville, and Ben still lives in Tell City, Indiana. So a lot of the times, talking over the phone, gaming or doing these podcasts are the ways for me and Ben really get to hang out. So you're kind of joining us and just two twin brothers hanging out, talking about Indiana sports, more specifically football. But I'm excited, Ben, just about the whole experience at Bloomington, but most certainly the game.
Yeah. So just to get into our first question, Robbie, I'll start things off on this response too. But the question is, and again, the audience can also comment. I'm curious to hear your thoughts or how you would respond. But our first question of the night is, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you picture walking into Memorial Stadium together for the first time? And I'll be honest with you, Robbie, I thought about this earlier, the best way to respond to this question. And I'll respond by telling you a story that makes me think, and my brother-in-law, Brian, if he's listening to this live or later on, he'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But the best comparison I can give is years back. It's been a long while since my father-in-law has been to an Indiana Hoosiers basketball game. He'd been to Assembly Hall before, but it had been a very long time. Brian and I had made many trips. I made many trips as part of the media, but him and I had gone, just traveling ourselves to watch games. But there was one time in particular years back where we got tickets for my father-in-law to go with us, again, for his first time in years when we can remember. And I just remember his reaction the first time walking into Assembly Hall, like actually seeing the court in the stadium. It's one thing to see it on TV, and I still remember that. I don't know how to describe it. It's like a butterfly feeling in the stomach or the goosebumps, but I knew how he was going to react, but to see him react in the fashion that he did, it was just like a kid in a candy store. And it actually made me and Brian both emotional. Like we both had kind of like tears of joy from it. We can tell like how much it meant to him to be there. And that ended up being probably my most memorable trip to IU. Now I could apply that same, situation to this upcoming football game. As much as it'll be fun to be back and seen on TV, I'll be watching Robbie's reaction to what he's experiencing the first time, literally from start to finish. Robbie, any thoughts?
Yeah, this is one of those twin moments again, too. I get to thinking about this question when you sent it to me earlier in the week. And I thought, well, the first thing that I think of, not having been to a football game before, is just the feeling that I had the first time we went to Assembly Hall when we were kids. I don't know if you remember when Dad, I think he took us to a couple of Midnight Madnesses back before it was a big festive sort of thing. It was just, hey, you're going to watch a practice at midnight. And it was Bob Knight that was there and everything. It was still this very surreal experience. I think you can remember Ben as a kid. I think I even designed like a model of Assembly Hall. Didn't I build something out of like a cardboard box? So for me, I had a very romantic and idolized view of Assembly Hall. So it was emotional. We went in there. And then, of course, you and I losing our dad from cancer whenever we were 20 in 2006. you and I going back there again. I think it was towards the beginning of the Archie era. There was a lot of excitement there. Ton Sony even came to the midnight, not Midnight Madness, but you know what I was talking about. The Hoosier Hysteria. That's what it is. The Hoosier Hysteria. So we made a joke of even he even came to it and stuff. So I kind of missed that, and I remember just walking in and seeing that having that feeling. And I think the best way to put it into words, I don't think I can do better than what Eric did. I don't know, Ben, if you remember one of those earlier Hoosier Hysteric episodes when they first started. Do you remember the first year they did the fantasy camp?
Yeah, I remember that.
Remember the one, I'll never forget, it's an episode where Eric is just recording himself talking by himself in Assembly Hall with like the lights out. And I think he was sitting up on top of one of the wooden areas of the bleachers. But the fervor and excitement and emotion that he talked about with how it felt to be in there and then to play on that court that first time doing that fantasy league, he was trying to tell Ward. I think at that time Ward was not there. I'm pretty sure Ward was back in California. But the way he was explaining the way it felt, do you remember that episode what I'm talking about? The kind of emotional. Yeah. I think if any of you are Indiana fans, whether you like the Hoosier Hysterics or not, I know it's a very polarized kind of podcast there in the Indiana fan base, but I think Eric put it really well in words on the emotional level, what it could feel like. Now, I have nothing to compare to the football side of it. I know I've seen the stadium before from the parking lot. I walked along it and seen the outside, but I've never been in it before. And the fact that it's going to be sold out, the big tailgating experience beforehand, I think I'm going to be more just in shock about what I'm going to hear. And I thought Assembly Hall was loud, but something tells me it's not going to compare to that stadium being full at the beginning of that game. That's something I was wanting to come back to ask you about. I was thinking about this earlier today, is how do you compare the sound, the noise at like a packed Indiana home basketball game to the football game? Now, I know inside the building, your sound's going to funnel a lot more. I just didn't know, is there a comparison there? Would you say they're about equally strong, or is it quite a bit of a difference to be at a packed? Because I remember you were at that Michigan game in football.
Yeah.
That had to be a pretty packed game when it happens.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm sure we'll touch on it later. And that's such a hard question that if I had to stack one or two in the other, because they're obviously two different sports, but the atmospheres, I guess the best way I can describe it is I feel like I got the same feeling. Like I've been in Assembly Hall when it was just crazy, and you can almost like not even hear yourself think. I think Rhett Lewis actually made this comment on the Big Red Carpet podcast on Back Home Network. And he was talking about his playing days whenever they traveled to Oregon. And actually, he was a part of that team that beat Oregon for Indiana. And he mentioned that it got so loud, it's almost like you can hear nothing, like silence. And there's moments like that you can't really describe it until you feel it. And I think it ties into the next question really well, too. But I guess all I can just say is both Assembly Hall and Memorial Stadium, whenever they're just like going full bore, it's indescribable. That's just the best way I can actually describe it, is that it's indescribable. But actually, that kind of segues into our next question real well, Robbie, and for the audience.
Ben, I just want to stop you real quick, if that's okay, because you just reminded me of something I completely forgot. Do you remember how much fun it was last year to follow the Crimson Cast? It's always been a great podcast. But as the year just kept getting surreally successful and kind of shocking, I think living vicariously through Galen and Scott and their reactions, especially with Galen was going to every single road game and all these experiences, and the way he described, I forgot it. He probably is a great comp to what Eric described the feeling of Assembly Hall to be like. But Galen was able to describe the feeling of the crowd, the momentum of games. And I think he articulates that feeling extremely well, too, because it was just so much fun last year to wait until Sunday morning for another Crimson Cast just to share the collective kind of unified excitement that we all felt game after game. And then uncertain, is this going to continue to be? And then you make it to 10-0, and you're just like, I can't believe it's the first team in program history to make it there. It was just so much fun to watch that unfold last year.
Yeah. Robbie, really quick, just to jump in before we go to that next question. Brian's actually watching live tonight. He had a few comments, or a couple comments on Facebook. He said the Hoosier Hysteria I went to with you guys was awesome. And then he said, "Oh, I can't wait to see your reaction when you walk into the football stadium." So I was really hoping he was actually watching live that because he remembers what it's like. And Brian, again, if you missed that part, you and I witnessing your dad's reaction going in the assembly hall, I'll never forget that one. It's going to be very much the same for Robbie. And I think that's why I really wanted to go all out and make this trip meaningful. Robbie, this question is more so meant for you. Because I have been there, so I've experienced, watching the games on TV and actually being there. So the question being, how do you think experiencing a live Hoosiers football game will feel different from watching it on TV? Nope. I think you're muted.
Sorry about that. I was muted. I think I'm gonna feel as though experiencing that game and leaving it's going to make me want more of that. I think that's something you described to me in the past too. Is like, you're gonna think, man, why did I wait so long to do this kind of experience? So for me, I think I'm just going to be really excited, and I know that a lot of television, the audio of the stadium is deafened down somewhat, so you can hear the broadcast. So to watch a football game beyond a high school or like Western Kentucky Hilltoppers, I've been to several of their games, but obviously this is a much bigger stadium. We're in Big Ten play on this kind of thing. So for me, just taking in all the sights and sounds that you'll hear, the good and the bad, I guess you say, hopefully it's going to be much more cheers than groans through the stadium. But for me, I think it's just going to feel, the best word to describe it is probably immersed, to feel immersed more into like this collective experience. And if they're doing well, I could probably feel that same energy. You feel it like a really good concert where you feel like everybody's in one kind of momentum together. I don't know what else to compare it to because I don't have another freaking Indiana game to compare it to. So a concert is the best kind of comparison I can go with.
Yeah. So the next question, again, probably more so diverted to you, but I can comment from my experiences. But the question is, what emotions are you expecting when you hear the crowd roar or the band play for the first time?
Well, for me, excited and then also in awe. I've always loved the Indiana fight song, and especially hearing it in Assembly Hall. But to hear it in the context of Memorial Stadium, packed, I just think it's going to be a very awe-inspiring moment, and just to kind of see the things that you just don't see when you watch a broadcast. We're always exposed to commercials, just punching us in the face with capitalist advertisements over and over and again. It's usually when we go to the restroom, get another drink or something like that. For me, it's just it's everything. I mean, it's seeing the architecture of the stadium, the improvements to the stadium, walking around, seeing other fans, hopefully running into some people that we see before. But for me, I think it's going to seem so cool to hear that song in the context of a very packed and excited football game, not just only basketball. Because I was one of those fans that grew up as a hardcore Indiana basketball fan, but I hardly even noticed that there was a football program whenever you and I were younger. You and I, because of Dad, focused more on Notre Dame. We grew up watching Rudy, the movie. I had like this kind of romantic view of that, but I've really grown to appreciate Indiana from the time that me and you remember seeing Randall L. play. Remember with the oval, the ugly oval, the evil oval, whatever you want to look at that. And I remember he was the first Indiana player to really capture my interest. So I just can't wait to experience the whole thing. But yeah, hearing the fight song, if we can hear it, I guess that's kind of a newbie question I have. In a stadium that's that packed, is it that easy to really hear the fight song that the band plays?
From what I remember, you don't have trouble hearing it. You'll somehow be able to experience both, if that makes sense.
Well, I think it's because, like, my wife was in competitive marching band in high school, and she told me that lots of high-level schools, especially D1 college schools, are probably using microphones. So a lot of the marching band has microphones on them. So I assume that that's also getting pushed out around the stadium a little bit better too. If not, then the stadium seems like it would just drown out the entire sound. So that might be another reason why we can still experience and hear that. So I'm also excited. I'm excited to see Indiana's marching band after the years of being a high school teacher and supporting my kids that do it. It's not just the football game, but even seeing the halftime show is going to be fun. I think it's also homecoming. Is it homecoming as well? Yeah, so we get to see those festivities too.
Well, I'll acknowledge Brian's comment again on Facebook. Brian Schoon commented, or when you hear the crowd all say as one, first down Hoosiers. And that's something you don't get to hear on TV as much, but it just continues elevating that momentum, that energy in the crowd. Kind of the first question we talked on is like, I kind of want to mention what my experience was like. And I think Brian was with me the first time I went to an IU football game, but I think I caught myself first just trying to take this almost wide span view of the stadium because it's, you see it on TV, but then to actually be there and you see for the field first time. In my opinion, there's not a bad seat in Memorial Stadium, whether you're close or high up. But I remember looking at the structural integrity of the stadium, just like appreciating every little detail. And we were there early enough to where you really see the crowd build up early. And we've been at some games where the crowd wasn't as big, but you used the example earlier of the Michigan game last year. So I made it to 2 games last year. I was at the Western Illinois game where it was like NCAA football on easy mode, and we just hammered them. And then the Michigan game was just a straight up dogfight. And that game, my friend Walter Hume was there. He got me tickets for my birthday. And it was like a playoff atmosphere. That was probably the most high energy experience I had so far at a Indiana Hoosier home game because it was just that loud and the environment was just like you almost just feel like exhausted by the time the game's
That's
over,
what you
especially
told
in
me.
a dogfight.
Yeah,
Like
you told me it's also one of the more stressful experiences you've had.
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
Brian will remember one particular, but I'm trying to save that for the memories part, maybe later on. But Brian will remember the Michigan game years ago where we experienced every single weather element you can experience, and it became desperate times. So if he knows what I'm talking about, I'll talk more about in a minute. But
that was the freezing game, right?
Yes,
I'm pretty sure we're just
moving
wet
on to
and cold.
Yeah. But on the next question, it says, and I'll give you the chance to respond unless you want me to go first, but it says, how does this trip connect to our childhood memories of sports, family, or growing up in Indiana?
Well, it seems like it's somewhat disconnected because it's a basketball reference again. But I think for some of us, it really is our origin into falling in love with Indiana was basketball. So you and I being born in 83, the earliest memory that I have, I don't know if you can remember it, but I remember vividly this memory in 1987 before you and I are in preschool. I do remember the Syracuse, Indiana championship game. I remember sitting Indian style on the floor in front of the TV. And I'll never forget Dad just jumping up and down when Keith Smart hit that shot at the end of it. And I remember from that moment on, I think there was always somewhat of an infinity for Indiana the rest of the time. We got to see those Calbert Cheney, Greg Graham years as well. And, of course, we've experienced some very high highs and lows as well in our lifetime, mostly lows in our 41 years that are on there. But to me, that connects. I also mentioned there in the late 90s, seeing Randall L. play, to see like there could be an NFL caliber kind of player to do that. And remember, you also have to know that in our small town of Cannleton, we didn't have a football program or a football team. So you and I did not necessarily grow up as these huge football fans. Dad was always a baseball player. We were basketball players. So the basketball part was easy to fall in love with. I would say there aren't really any childhood memories of the football part. But what I'm hoping is, and my message tonight would be, is I'm hoping to build that for my daughter. Because, Ben, I know we'll talk about this later. It's me going with you this time, but I'm hoping that this builds a routine or a tradition of some sense in which me and my wife and my daughter, as she's getting older, go to a game every year or every couple of years and kind of, share with her the love that we have for Indiana sports, the way Dad exposed you and I to Indiana basketball.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head. I was thinking of the 87 Syracuse, which I know we weren't like physically there, but that's probably my earliest memory as well from our childhood days. And outside of that, it was, of course, we didn't go to an Indiana Hoosiers football game. I think Dad supported the program, but we actually grew up more so like Notre Dame football fans. And still to this day, we're like reversible jacket fans. As long as Indiana's not playing Notre Dame, I'll root for it. But if they're ever matched up like last year, of course, I was rooting for Indiana when they played in the playoffs. But outside of that, I'll root for Notre Dame all day long. It just can become part of a childhood. Because on that side note, Rudy, the movie Rudy was an inspiration for us that really started our love for college football. And, we stuck with Notre Dame. And then outside that, back when Hoosier Hysteria was like for Bob Knight, it was more of a midnight practice. I do remember Dad taking us to one of those where it was literally just kind of a quiet stadium and you're watching a practice.
But the show was night. You have to remember that me and you were just watching night, just slapping our peepers on him the whole time, just trying to, because he had that, as people say, he had that ability. I remember whenever he walked into the court and not that we want to make this into a basketball podcast, but just remember whenever he walked into the court for the practice, the whole mood in the arena changed. And I heard that he had that presence to be able to do it. And then you and I had the honor when we were doing Who's Your Heartland to be at the Bluebird that time that he surprisingly showed up because of what other former players did and the Hoosier Hysterics did. I could not believe that me and you were there whenever he walked up on stage and spoke there. I still consider myself really lucky. And as you can tell, there's a lot of personal attachment that you and I have from the time that we were kids to there. And you and I are the two fans that a lot of the IU podcasting network, many of them went to IU. I know you brought up Ray Lewis earlier in them. Many of them were alumni. Me and you did not go to college at IU. We grew up just being in love with the teams that had played in. It was really what our father had instilled in us. And then most of our close friends were Indiana fans as well.
Yeah, really well said. I mean, outside of that, I think, whether it was basketball or football, what memories I tied to, again, it's more so on this childhood question, but as I went into my teen or adult years, especially more adult, most of my Indiana basketball experiences or football experiences have actually been through my in-law family. That bond, my brother-in-law and I, Brian, have always been close, I think, since day one. We knew from the moment we met that I think we were going to be best friends. But every time I think of these memories, and I'm sure I'm going to touch on it later, is that every trip that we would take for basketball or football, we've experienced good games and bad games, but I think we always made the best of every experience, whether where we went to eat or the game overall. It was just a really good time. I have no doubt in my mind that this trip is going to be in that same category, if not better, because I said it's very important to me. So that's what actually goes into our next question as well. What makes this trip more than just a football game for you? So, Robbie, in your thoughts, what does make this trip more than a game?
To me, it's family. After, like many of your listeners saw in your first main episode, whenever you came back, is that both of us lost our mother in July, on July 14th. And for me and you, this is our first trip, just me and you, in a long time. I really don't know if we've ever just gone on just a trip for just me and you.
Yeah, we have. There was one in particular. It was not obviously not football.
I remember.
About that.
I remember.
But the Gannon exhibition.
Yeah. Yep. Right.
We went, and of course we'll talk about that later. But go ahead and continue.
Well, to me, like I said, this trip is more another step. It's going to sound kind of cheesy and philosophical, but as you know, I like philosophy, and I can find that there's philosophy in everything that we're doing in our lives. And for me, it's a meaningful trip. It's also a step in the process of just healing after our family's gone through a lot of grief and whatnot. And for me, I think it's one of those trips that's just great for me and you continuing to build a bond with each other. Because in our direct family, it's just me and you left. It's on that end. And I think that having moments like this, so like I told you, I plan on taking you as a surprise to Gettysburg at some point, going on a guy's trip. Remember, you and I went there when we were 10 or 11. And it'd be cool to go back there and honor Dad again, especially since I'm doing the history stuff on the podcast now, too. That's one of my goals, is that me and you take a Pennsylvania trip at some point for a week or over a weekend and then go through that. So, yeah, Ben, for me, it's much more than just a football game. The football game is the catalyst and is extremely exciting. But for me, I wouldn't want to go with anybody else other than you.
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm looking forward to more than anything, is thinking back to that Gannon exhibition too, which was just an exhibition game, but being there was great. But it was actually, the drive there and back was part of it. Right? Robbie and I bonded even more, and we had heart-to-heart conversations, and it was just the overall, from start to finish, the trip was meaningful. Again, the football game is still important to us, and we're passionate about it, and I have no doubt we're going to have fun either way. But the trip's just more important to me because, it's us spending time together. Like Robbie made the comment earlier on the show, we've always been close, but we haven't lived together or see each other every day for many years now. So when we have opportunities like this, and I think Mom would say this too, is to make the most of it. And this is to give you an example, because it's going to tie in the next question. I'll go ahead and put this up on the screen anyways and just go right into it. But, when Mom passed away, or before Mom had passed away, obviously she was very good at managing money and things like that. And, Mom wanted us to be taken care of and all that. But I remember Mom specifically said, for those that know Mama Malcomson, you can picture her saying this, that she didn't want us to spend money on bills and doing this and that. She wanted us to, whether it was me and my wife, which we have and would, or me and Robbie, she wanted us to do something meaningful with it, something fun, something to go out and enjoy. And part of this money is actually devoted to this trip, because I do think, Mom, it would mean a lot to her knowing that we planned this trip together to like go out of town from our own places where we live and just spend a weekend hanging out and taking in the whole experience. And I think that's what would take more than anything. But the question being, Robbie, is in what ways does going to this game feel like honoring our mom or carrying forward something that she'd be proud of?
Well, I think that sets up the answer to the question really well. It's more of trying to remedy something that Mom always had a concern of, because when I moved away, or there was always a fear that I would move away or you would, and then like me and you would lose connection with each other. And Mom always worried about losing that connection too. She would always hug you like you're going off the war. You know what I mean? Like she would always, worry that that'd be the last time. And I really honor her for that as well too. So I think most importantly, to honor with her and carry memory forward, you and I are taking proactive measures to maintain a strong relationship with each other. And like you said, applying our money, and not just the things that we have to have or just to maintain the lives that we have, but to also put aside some money to go on these kind of trips to build genuine memories together. So again, you're not just living to survive, but you're also living to enjoy your life.
And you mentioned this earlier, and I hope this genuinely has the kind of impact on you. I think it will. I feel pretty confident about it. But like you had mentioned, I think it's going to make your love go to another layer. Being able to experience this first time, and maybe it inspires your family to go enjoy the game, like Siler Rain, your daughter's first experience someday. Like just picturing a little tiny Indiana Hoosiers cheerleader outfit right now kind of gets me a little emotional. But I think that would be awesome that here you get to go and you get to have this experience. I think you're going to love it so much that you're going to want your wife and your daughter and them to share in that experience as well. Maybe we all do as a family overall. The next question is, what are you most looking forward to sharing or explaining about the game day atmosphere?
See, this is where I think is the hardest question you gave me for the week. Because on this episode, it's kind of a preview for the Michigan State game. There's not a lot of tangible, intangible things to reference. And what I'm looking forward to is after the experience and you and I go over what it was like, it's going to be easier to talk about because then I have tangible and intangible references to make. So for Ben, I think it's going to be more of the people. My gut's telling me the stories about the people that you and I meet and talk to while we're there, as well as some of those moments that are in the game. That's what my gut's telling me. But sorry, I cut you off there.
No, you're good. I was thinking about this as we're building up to it, and I think what we'll most look forward to sharing or explaining about that game day atmosphere afterwards is, and Brian would probably know what I'm talking about too. I know he's on here, but there'll be moments before, during, and even possibly after the game's over where you'll be feeling different emotions the whole time. But there'll be certain plays or certain situations. I'll give you a prime example because I love this story. It'll make Brian laugh. But there was years back, I believe it was the Ball State home game. Brian and I were talking. It was a special teams play. We're taking a punt return, I believe, or a kick return. And Brian and I got into this thing where we like to give a bold prediction on an individual performance. And the player's name escapes me, but I think Brian will actually comment in here about it too. But Brian actually predicted a kick or punt return for a touchdown. And, of course, I was wishing for it. But as it's actually happening in front of us and the players running down the side, I'm already turned to the side, grabbing a hold of him and shaking him and being like, I can't believe he did. But, like, those are moments that we can look back on. And Brian still have those moments today where we'll look back on. You'll catch yourself talking about not just the game, but different situations or different happenings throughout that you can just feel that high energy or positive or negative feeling, they'll stand out. And I'm looking forward to the response episode about talking all those in detail. What do you think?
Well, I agree with you, and I think that there will be those moments like that. I also think that something I'm going to take away from this is more of an appreciation for football, because I am coming into it as more of a basketball fan in general and baseball fan. But I think having this experience is going to make me realize even more why football is America's favorite sport. Like what is it about football that's sort of a microcosm? I don't know if any of our listeners have heard of Ken Burns before. Ken Burns is probably the most famous American documentary filmmaker, at least since 1990 with the Civil War documentary. And he just said on an interview just this last week, I think with Theo Vaughn, I think I might have shared that with you, that football is like a perfect microcosm of like American culture and things that unite us and bring us together. So I'm hoping to kind of feel that whenever you and I are done with this game. But I know I'm not the host of the show, you are, but I'm going to turn the question on you a little bit. It might give me a little bit of an idea what I feel. So see if you can remember your first football game that you went to. I think you've been at, 4 or 5 now? Have you been to total? And do you remember, if this question were asked of you the day, at the end of the day or the next day after that first game, what do you think you would have shared or tried to explain about the game day atmosphere after your first time experiencing it?
After the first time experiencing it again, it's almost like two different stories, because the first experience, it was a decent crowd, but it wasn't a packed stadium.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a big like feelings type person, like how I feel emotionally or physically through it, because I like becoming that engaged into the experience. But the biggest thing that sticks out to me overall with all the games I've been to is having that type of energy hits you where it feels like the ground beneath your feet is vibrating. Like you almost feel like you're on an amusement ride at the time. That's the part that sticks with me. And there's moments like if, say, we have a big play offensively or a big play defensively, you can just feel that energy. And it's a completely different feeling than watching it on TV. You can only get so excited from there, and you still can, but to actually be there. And I think what catches me is like, you don't just being in the moment, that all the people around you are too, so you're feeling their energy on top of that. It's just such a shared experience that I cherish.
So when people say when something happened, you can just feel the whole energy of the stadium shift. I think a good reference is, do you remember that first home North Carolina football game this year? And I can't remember. I want to say it was against TCU or somebody like that, where there was like a huge play. I think their first drive, the crowd was pumped and the music was playing. And I think there was one play that happened on TCU's end that shifted the whole momentum. And then announcers described it like the entire stadium's energy and vibe were just like, they just said, I didn't know how to explain it. It just like sucked out of the atmosphere of that. So you're saying that you've been there before where you could feel those ebbs and flows of a game emotionally. So that makes sense that you can kind of like feed off that physical energy of the people around you. I know my instinct when I'm watching games on TV, when I get upset, is to get up and walk away and then kind of peek at the TV. Well, now my ass can't go anywhere. So the Michigan State game, I'm just like stuck there. So I have a feeling that I'm going to have moments of joy and moments of probably frustration too. Unless for some reason they have a game like the way they have with Illinois, then there'll probably be very little frustration if it ends up like that way.
Yeah, and I've been at and you're absolutely right about that. You will experience the ebbs and flows. And if you remember, similar to the basketball experience, but it's high octane. There's a little bit, of course, the physicality is totally different from football, but you still have that same kind of ebbs and flows where you can feel the entire energy shift. I'll tell you, like overall, Indiana Hoosier athletics experienced my entire life as far as like a complete shift. I mean, a 180 shift in energy. And it was something that didn't even happen on the court. It was something that didn't happen in the stands at the time. It was something that happened on like a national scale. But I was at an Indiana Hoosier basketball game covering it. And if Chris Corley's listening, he'll remember this too. Because, it was a high pumped game. And then the news broke about Kobe Bryant and his daughter and the helicopter crash. And it just spread like a wildfire through the media section, and all of a sudden, you picture, like the audience, the wave in the crowd.
Yeah,
it's almost like a bomb went off, and it just spread throughout the stadium. And all of a sudden, the entire energy in the stadium shifted, and it's like you can hear them talking on the court. It was so quiet. And even after the game was over, no one was really talking about the game. They were talking about Kobe and his daughter.
Yeah.
It was just like one of those things that just stick with you. So it was a way, I'm more so giving an example of how you can feel that shift, but that was like the most powerful shift that I've experienced in person at a game. But other than that, there's been many other events I've been at to where from play to play, you're going to experience like a high and then a very high. And then you have your moments where we're, but let's hoping that our Michigan State experience is similar to that Illinois game earlier this year.
Yeah, hopefully. A lot less stressful.
Yeah. But to continue on, the next question is, what does the road trip there represent for us beyond just miles on the highway? Now, I'll say this is kind of similar to a question we had above. So I'd rather more segue into this next one being, what kind of conversations or memories do you hope we'll have on the way there and back? And be honest with you, I kind of thought about this too, is like, you know, I have no doubt we'll probably have a lot of heart-to-hearts, and we'll talk about life and we'll talk more about our experiences there. But to be honest with you, I'll probably share some stories with you more off air about previous experiences, especially Brian being with us too. I have no doubt we're going to have a lot of laughs and serious moments. But and we'll probably talk about this too, but I'll go into more detail just for the audience of probably one of the most – oh, man, it's probably – Brian, you have to comment and agree on this or not, but it's probably one of the hardest – experiences that I've had at an Indiana Hoosier football game, not just for the performance on the field, but the environment. And that was that Michigan game years ago where we experienced all the kind of elements. I mean, from the jump, and Brian remembers this, from the jump, it was a cold day anyways. It was cloudy and wet and things like that. And as we were walking in the stadium, both me and him immediately step in a giant puddle of water. was that as you can imagine, if I'm one of those people that if my feet are uncomfortable, then I'm just going to be uncomfortable.
Just sopping wet the rest of the day.
So like soaking wet, my socks and shoes. It's already cold. We get into the stadium. I think it started raining a little bit. It hailed a little bit. It sleeted. Then it even started snowing at different points. But I just remember it being, for one, on the field, Michigan was just kicking our ass in that game. And so it wasn't even close. We were just getting blown out. And then I could not feel my feet to save my life. And this is how desperate I know Brian's laughing, but it's probably – and I'm not ashamed to admit it because that's how desperate I was. But when I get to the point where I can't feel my toes, I'm like, I'm going to like suffer frostbite out here.
Yeah.
And so
it's like you're in a World War I trench or something over here.
In desperation, I go buy like 5 hot dogs. And I mean, I think I ate all of them, or I had Brian eat one. And I actually took the aluminum foil wrappers and tried to shove them into my shoes just to see if I would gain some form of heat.
He got a heater insulation.
Just for the record, it didn't do shit for me.
I was about to say, it probably made you worse.
It didn't do anything for me. We didn't even make it for that whole game. But I just remember that stick with me. So, we got blown out and then the elements and stuff. And I just remember we went back to the hotel and I just had my feet sitting against the heater, just trying to warm up. And I was just glad to be back in the heat from that. But that was probably one memory that would probably tell on the trip if we were to imagine looking forward. What about you?
Well, I know for Brian, Brian already knows this about us, as talkative as me and you both are. If it's as funny as I think it'll be, if it's between you and I, then Brian knows it'll just be dead silence because we'll be laughing so hard we cannot make a sound effect of a laughter when it goes. Notice me and Brian shaking his head, and both of us, and we'll probably take our sense of humor a little too far as usual, especially me on that side. But for me, the road trip is not like just about a journey in the miles, like you said. It's a philosophical outlook on this too, is that it gives me a chance to bond with you and Brian again, to catch up on your lives and kind of going through that experience. And then you guys get to kind of see my anticipation and my excitement going into that experience. And then on the way back, of course, we get to kind of share my thoughts about how that goes. It might be actually a really good sort of way of kind of planning what I'm going to say on the after episode after all this is over.
And the last question for the night is, after this first game together, what do you hope becomes a new tradition for us as brothers, something we can carry forward each season?
Well, I'd just say building on the experiences, like the stories of the experiences that are good and bad, and that you go through these, different ones you have. I think over the years we can have a chance to build a really good set of stories that kind of bond us together. A lot like how you and Brian have from your experiences at those games. So for me, it's more of just about talking about what surprised us, what maybe didn't surprise us, or what made us happy or what made us frustrated about what we saw in the game. Getting an idea what it's like to be at a tailgate for the first time and something like that. So for me, I look forward to kind of expressing those like new kid going somewhere kind of experiences. Cause like, this, man, and anybody that's listening to Hoosier fan knows this, nothing is like your first time. Whether it goes well or not, you can't replicate the feeling of a first experience. It's kind of like playing a really good masterpiece of like a video game. You get like Red Dead Redemption 2 or something like that, or The Last of Us. It's amazing, but the second or third playthrough is not quite the same experience as your first one. You know what I mean? It doesn't have the same sense of wonder or discovery. And these are the kind of things I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, very well said. And I think we touched on it multiple times throughout the episode, but I guess what I hope for it is it definitely won't. I have no doubt in my mind it won't be the last trip that we all take together. I think it's going to inspire future trips. I mean, I doubt we'll probably be able to pull off, just because of our busy lives, that we'll be able to pull off a trip like that this season. But who knows? Maybe it becomes an annual thing that we're able to plan another trip next year and have that experience all over again. But I think this particular experience is just going to add to the many stories that we've already created. And I'm just excited about it overall, which kind of goes into our closing thoughts. So, Robbie, really looking back, and I'll start because, on this one is, looking back on this episode, this was all about, again, the anticipation building up to it, the brotherhood, the spirit of Indiana football. One of the new things that we get to experience is the Indiana Hoosiers now have a mascot. So we'll be able to see Hoosier bicycles. That'll be a cool experience for the first time that we'll both get to have together. But yeah, I mean, I think it's more the end thing is it's, all the things that we've been through this year, through Mom's medical battles and then her passing. And then this is our first road trip together since that situation. It's right before the holidays. It's right before Thanksgiving and Christmas. And again, I think it's just going to be a chance to build on our relationship, to be able to hang out like me, you and Brian going up there. Again, we're talking a lot about the game, but we're going up that Friday. You mentioned maybe we get to go to the upstairs pub and have a beer or two. We touched on it a little bit, but not as much. But think about the tailgate scene we're going to experience before that. And I've been there before. One of my fondest memories is, and I've seen people say this before, is I think me and Brian's very first tailgate experience was we didn't get 5 feet from the truck, and these group of guys stopped us and wanted us to chug a beer with them. I mean, they just handed us beers out of their cooler, and we just chugged a beer in front of them. So, it's a very welcoming atmosphere. People are making food. People are singing or playing music or just hanging out and having a good time. And I look forward to you getting to experience. Literally, you've seen it from a distance, but to be able to come up there on game day, take in the entire tailgate experience, and see hopefully some familiar faces we know, and hopefully experience a Hoosier victory. I think all encompassing, no matter what, I will take a lot from this experience. What about you? What's your closing thoughts?
Yeah, I'll take a lot too from it, and mostly just focusing on connections, like trying to build stronger connections with you and Brian, with other people that we're meeting along the way, and a stronger connection with the team. And I want to end with a philosophical note, and that being is whether you're a sports fan or not, I think anybody listening to this podcast is more than likely at least somewhat of one. We cannot deny that sports is a catalyst that really brings a lot of people together. It can divide people that we know as well too, but especially for like a masculine or male culture, a lot of times sports gives us kind of a segue or a transition into getting closer with friends and spending time with other people that we know. It's a very therapeutic thing. I don't think that we'd probably use those words over a beer at the upstairs pub, but that's really what it is. Like ultimately, we're going through a shared experience, and me in general, life is meant to be shared. And I think sports is just another one of those many ways that you can enjoy your time with other people, especially people that you're close to.
Yeah, great way to sum up, Robbie. So again, this was the episode kind of previewing our trip coming up next week. I plan on doing, it'll most likely be my next episode, is a reaction to that experience. So if you got a chance to catch this, please join us to hear our reaction from that whole trip overall. Other than that, I really appreciate your guys' time tonight on whichever platform that you were using. This has been Chapters, Conversations That Matter.